If you're tired of the standard business and marketing fundamentals, frameworks, and funnels, you need a little mischief. Get ready to turn up the volume on the CEO Mischief Maker podcast, where you access conversations with seasoned business owners who have smashed through mindset barriers, innovated the standard boring business and marketing playbooks, and executed future-paced strategies with bleeding-edge tools and tactics to micro-fail their way into massive success and growth. We are Mindset Impact Strategic Catalysts helping innovative entrepreneurs focus. We are CEO Mischief Makers. Ready to make a little mischief? Okay, CEO Mischief Makers, it's Strategy and Tactics Day. Must be Friday. So I cannot wait to dive into this because I've been chatting with Evelyn Eccard here over the last three episodes of this podcast, and we are getting down to the details. And this, so I love the DISC analysis. I'll be honest with you, and I'm going to share a little insight into my business. Everyone I hire, I require to take the DISC assessment. And the main reason, it's selfish completely, because I am a very strange DISC profile. I have a very strange mix. The number one thing that I look for in people who work with me are high C, because I am very, very low C. And so I need those people to push back with me and to help me stay on task with that C, that part of the DISC. I need people around me. If everybody else was high D, high I, high S, we'd never get anything done. So I specifically have people take this assessment, and I look for people who are higher in C than I am, so that I know they will hold me accountable, and I will be able to trust that things will get done. So that's a little tidbit for me. So let's dive into that, Evelyn. So you are obviously know way more about it than I do. Give us an idea of how we can use this kind of profiling, this kind of assessment in our businesses, and what strategy can we use to use this information to better our world?
Absolutely. So kudos to you. Bravo to you for using it. People use it for hiring as well. That's really important, because you want to get the right person in their strength zone. So they say high C's keep D's out of jail, because they do. They're the ones who are analytical. They deep dive and they focus on the data. They're in the weeds. They know all the details. So we could do two things. One is let's talk about hiring per se, right? So entrepreneurs have to have a D in them somehow, right? Because they're driving projects. Think of all the D's. So if someone's a dominant personality, they're drivers, they're decisive. And the higher the D, the more sometimes they are task oriented and not so much people oriented. So when we take a D, so if you're hiring and you need a manager, you may want to lean to someone who has that D strength in their, because people can be a combination, and that's in their strength zone. So look for that D. The I's are normally in a sales team, right? They're the partiers. They're playful. They love the people. They're the outgoing ones that in a social setting, they talk to everybody. They know no strangers. And so salespeople or someone in customer service or someone, they get their energy from people. So they need to be, they're not good working alone. They need that, but they could do large crowds. And I think S's are steady personalities, and they love one-on-one conversations. I think they make great coaches, S's, because they're great listeners and great team members. And then we talked about the C's, those compliant personalities who are absolutely just analytical, detailed, and they're thinkers. So they need that quiet time to think. So in hiring, so S's, C's can be anything that needs details, accounting, any one-on-one. You use it. What specifically do you use it for when you're hiring that C? MJK, do you use it for?
If it's anything administrative or
Mhm.
statistical, if I'm going to have someone gather data for me, or even the technical parts, where if I need someone to build something technically and they have to make sure each piece is continued, that's where I look for the higher C. But I'm weird. I'm like a 99D, 98I, 75S, and 10C. So that
So it's perfect. And that's the
C's.
awareness that, I'm sorry, say that.
No, I'm just saying I need C's around me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm an ID and I work with someone who is a CS, and we're perfect. Like, we both work perfectly. And so a couple things that may help you, and I'll go into communication. If you're communicating with a D, you want to be short, concise, top of the waves. Don't get into details, and let them know, hey, I do have the details if you want them. Because if you go into the details, they're going to be so bored. Like, their brain can't embrace all that information. So either email it to them or tell them you have it, and let them drive the conversation. I have the details, MJK. Do you want those now or do you want them later? Let them decide on, because they like to be decisive. So you're giving them that information, but definitely top of the waves. And eyes, bless those eyes, because I am an eye. So how you communicate with me is to connect with me. Ask me how I'm doing. I's and S's, they're the people side. S is how we're doing. S is, well, I'll stay with the I's for a minute. Connect with me as a person, make it fun, make the conversation fun, and you'll get my attention 100%. So my I is not as high as I think my husband's an I. I haven't tested him. He doesn't want to get tested, but we all know who I's are. So, and he's really the fun person in the relationship. Like, I can focus more, like my D, he's the fun part, right? So include that in your day-to-day, even in your conversations. With S's, communicating with S's is really important to obviously connect with them first, because they're people oriented. Ask them how their family is. And sometimes D's would rather pull their hair versus having those conversations, right? But that's what they need. They need to be able to connect in order to feel relaxed so they could be themselves, and then they could connect with you in a conversation. Too often D's just get right to business, and then that person feels like, wow, something must be wrong. They didn't ask me anything. And then they're in their heads. And how long are they in their heads for, right? So that's important, those initial conversations to have. And then C's, if you're going to speak to a C, have those details. They need all the pieces of the puzzle. If you give them the corners and expect them to kind of like be creative, and they're creative, but I need all the pieces of the puzzle in order to make those decisions. And so that's where it's kind to come in and be in the weeds with them. And, if you're a D communicating with a C, bear with them because they're going to give you, and you're like, oh my God, I think I want to just poke my eye out. However, that's where they need those, that part. They need that in order to then feel like they are heard. And then that connection and that communication piece gets so much easier. They're not in their heads thinking that you don't like them because you didn't say
Right.
hello.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's crazy. I know. I have to do this all the time. So whenever there's a couple of people I work with on a regular basis that I'm investing in their company, right? And so whenever we text back and forth, I always forget to say the greetings, right? I always just go I just go straight to it. I don't go, good morning, how are you? None of that baloney. Like, I don't have time for that. Let's just get business. Okay, here's what it is. Here's what I did. And I have to remind myself, oh yeah, you are human. You probably should say good morning. So, I mean, I have to remind myself of those things because it's really not important to me. If you sent me a text and you didn't say good morning, it wouldn't hurt my feelings one bit.
Right.
I wouldn't have any problem with it at all. But I know people need that. They need that. Oh, she's in a bad mood. Uh-oh, she's in a bad mood. Doing okay because she didn't say good morning. No, it's not because I'm in a bad mood. It's like I care.
That's the thing. It's so important, like knowing your audience and who you're sending that to.
Yeah.
And really the coaching with some of the Ds is, hey, write like a D, but before you hit send, go and put the fluff in, because that's what people feel like it, come on, I don't want, they need a, yes. Eventually you'll get to the point where you may not need that because they know who you are. If they're good at DISC and know you're a dominant personality, they're not going to take any of that personally.
Right.
That's the place we need to get to.
Yes.
But initially I write like a D and then I go back and I'm like, hello, how are you? I add that. I do.
Right.
So
it's important. It's important. And I get a reminder. So usually like this one person I'm thinking of that I work with, he'll start his conversation. He'll text me in the morning or something. He'll say, good morning, Mary. How's your day? And then he'll start going into what he needs. And I'm like, oh, that's right. I should probably respond back with good morning. Right. I have to remind myself of that because it's not normally, I would just go. This is communication. You need this information. That's it. There's no judgment, feeling. There's no worrying about whether I'm happy or not. It just is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's really fun. It's really funny to see that. And thank goodness I have those people because they remind me to be human.
And because DISC, you can kind of show them, like there's this page, and I'll share that with you. There's this page where it says, this is how you communicate with all these styles. Yeah. And hey, this is me. This is how I like my communication. There's nothing wrong with that, because then you're giving them heads up. Like, how do I communicate with my boss? How do I communicate with Mary better? How do I, what do I need to do to be a better communicator? And it's just not text and email. It's like starting meetings as well. I have a leader who starts with an S. He takes 15 minutes just going around like, how is everyone? And I tell him the D's on your call are like, this is a big waste of time.
Yes.
So, you got to understand, like, what's that mixture about too? You're coming from your S. Right. So yeah, you could get, I geek out over this stuff, because you really can apply it with so much, in your work career and your relationships at home, all of the above.
Yeah, I love it too. I geek out about it as well. So is there any last piece of advice that you would give the amazing people trying to create mischief in their worlds? Is there any last piece of advice in relation to, I think, more communication? Because really that makes our businesses run. That's what makes our businesses grow, is communication. If we can communicate effectively, how we help people, what their needs are and how we can meet those needs. Is there anything, any last piece of advice you can give?
Yeah, I would, a couple things. One, I would say, be yourself. Be yourself, because once you're yourself, we talked about that, then you become a better communicator, and you lower your anxiety because you're not expecting to be, to be anyone else than you. I had someone, a friend of mine says, be yourself because everybody else is taken. So who is that person? Like, knowing yourself, it becomes really important then, so you can be yourself, right? So that's first and foremost. I think in communication is like, what does that person need from you? Who do they need you to become to be a better communicator? And that's where we then we can communicate in their style and not in ours, because we're very grounded and we know what we are and how we like our communication, but we could be flexible and understand how they need us to show up and what communication they need from us. And it could be any style, is getting good at that. And so how do you know? You ask and you listen, right? And you become curious. And so, the part of growing as leaders, I mean, first and foremost, we have to lead ourselves. And when I say leaders, I mean, it could be anyone in any program. I happen to work with, leaders in corporations, but it could be, I lead myself, and understanding that as well, and taking these principles and understanding us better so that we can understand others better. And I think that's the big takeaway for me is definitely grow yourself and then help others grow. And how do you do that? You ask questions and listen to what their needs are.
Okay, hold on. If your mindset was shifted, you were inspired to innovate, and you were spurred into action, don't just move on with your day. Focus, my friend, and take a few minutes to visit CEOmischiefmaker.com to learn more about the value that was shared with you today. Please act now and create some CEO mischief of your own.